This is going to be short. I need to show you a couple of things. I need you to let me know, did you know it was this bad? Do you feel like this is an isolated incident? Or are you aware that this is one of thousands across the country? So check this out real quick.
Jesus said, you love, period. Jesus said, you welcome people, period. Jesus said, you extend radical hospitality, period. Jesus did not say one single word of condemnation about anyone based on sexual orientation or gender identity. In fact, the only mention Jesus really makes of it is this passage in Matthew. Maybe you're familiar with it. It's actually an affirmation. It's buried in ancient language, and it's surrounded by this weird teaching about divorce. But what Jesus said is this, that if you are a eunuch, and you have been a eunuch since birth, that was an ancient way of saying that if you differed from what was expected in terms of what we would call today sexual orientation or gender identity, that if you were a eunuch and you had been a eunuch from birth, that you were loved by God. Jesus.
Okay. Nothing about that is true. I hope anybody who watches me knows that right off the bat. As you're listing him, he said at least three things that just definitively are not true. And one of the things that is definitively not true is his definition of what a eunuch is. So if we look at eunuch from the Greek translation, you've got two of them. One of them is not within this context, so I'm not going to read it. The second one is, and it's what Jesus was referring to, a castrated person or one who voluntarily abstains from marriage. So what you have here is this guy trying to confirm what he wants to be true sociologically, culturally, by using Christ and twisting scripture. Okay, what do we call that, team? We call that eisegesis. That is when what you take your preconceptions, your thoughts, your wants, your needs, and you read them into the Bible so that you can pull out of the Bible what you want, not what it actually says. What you should do is practice what, team? Exegesis, right? So he's engaging in very poor hermeneutics already for someone who has 4 degrees, as you're going to hear him say here in a minute. But Jesus is what he uses to affirm and to confirm what he's talking about in this video, right? The LGBTQ, same sex, it's all good. Another just side note is there are only references to heterosexual relationships in the Bible. Now, I don't care to argue about the gay stuff because I don't really care, because we're way past that right now. I'm down to talk about it if it was 10 years ago. I'm down to talk about it if somehow the culture war ends and we stop chopping kids to pieces and we stop making this LGBTQ thing an entire progressive sociological shift that is going to end up in the fall of our culture. But for now, don't care about the homosexual stuff. Let's deal with what's most important. So what he's using is Christ. He's using that to affirm and confirm what he's saying in that first video. Now check out the second one.
I tend to think of Jesus as the second person of the Trinity. It's okay if you do. I don't tend to think about Jesus like that. And whenever I am coming in the space to worship, I am not worshiping Jesus. I am worshiping the God I know through Jesus. And that may seem like a subtle distinction, but for me, that's important. You don't have to believe the same way that I believe. But whenever I think about Jesus, I think about the late theologian Marcus Borg's description of who Jesus was and how he related to God. Marcus Borg said this. He said, throughout human history, there have been a number of spirit people. That is, people who have been so in touch with the divine reality beyond us, with God, that we can see God through them. He said, people like Buddha and Lao Tzu and Muhammad, Confucius, those are all folks who have helped us to see this sacred reality beyond us, God. He said, for Christians, Jesus is the clearest spirit person that we can identify. Jesus is the one who helps us understand God best. The way John Dominic Crossan put it is like this. If you want to know what God looks like in sandals, you point to Jesus. That is, that Jesus helps us to understand God. I don't...
No. If you want to know what God looks like in sandals, point to Jesus. He is God. Now, this is a good example of I am on the outskirts of Christianity, not because of what I believe or don't believe, but because I believe we're missing a lot. I believe things were altered by the early church and by people who had nothing else in mind but corruption. I believe too much happened throughout history, that the text that we have is just not what it should be. It's not what God intended. I believe things have been altered, changed, added, removed. Beyond that, I'm pretty much Christian. Okay, so even then, many will put me on the outskirts of Christianity. What we have here is complete removal from Christianity. Christ is not God to him. Christ and God are not synonymous. They're not identical. They're not of same status. So in one video, he uses Jesus as a godly authority to confirm what he wants to believe about the LGBTQ community. Then a few days later, he posts a video explaining that Jesus is basically on par with Muhammad and the Buddha. Okay, that is not Christian. He labels himself a progressive Christian. No, it's just not what it is. And then he goes on to do this one more video that I don't think I'm honestly going to show you, but he just challenges people to, he says, Christian fundamentalists have been saying that I need to read my Bible. And he says, I've got 4-year degrees and I have 4 degrees in biblical studies. Like, cool. Then you should have learned what exegesis was. You should have learned what eisegesis was. You should have learned how to practice responsible hermeneutics. These are things you should have learned. I don't have 4 degrees. I have a few. And I know all that stuff. And even me with my biases, where I want to find things wrong with the Bible because I'm of skeptical mind. I've always been very skeptical. I don't do what he does. So this is that dismantling that I've been talking to you guys about for a long time, in that the progressive movement is going to slowly but surely shift into the church. And then what do we see? We saw them shift into the Methodist Church, right? And then I said, okay, they're going to spread. They're going to slowly spread. And what do you see? Now they're spreading. They're spreading through denominations, any denomination that will first just accept them and then bring them in as part of their staff, as part of their leadership, on as pastors. And then once they're there, it's over. So on one end, I blame the church for this, because at the end of the day, you need to read through Corinthians. Paul is extremely clear about when you see immorality of this nature, sexual immorality specifically, start to enter and cause issues within the culture of the church, those people are to be removed from the church. Okay, does that mean that sinners cannot go to church? Of course not. That would be ridiculous. But if you read Corinthians, Paul's epistle, we just read it in the live Bible study. He's very clear about once this becomes a prevalent problem and the person has no intention of life change, they are to be removed. They are to be excommunicated. And that is for the health and safety of the rest of the congregation. So there's this fine tightrope walk of a balance between obviously making sure people who need help, people who are sinners, are in the church, for sure, 100%. But once that individual or those individuals are causing such cultural problems that the rest of the body is beginning to falter, then those individuals, Paul was savage about it. They were to be removed. They were to be kicked out. It was extremely clear. So this LGBTQ thing, as a whole, as a cult, falls under the category of sexual immorality, pretty point blank. And if you want verses about sexual immorality, you can literally read from almost any epistle or gospel in the New Testament. But you've got Galatians 5:19, when you follow the desires of your sinful nature, the results are very clear: sexual immorality, impurity, lustful pleasures. It's going to be your downfall. Ephesians 4 and Ephesians 5 both hit on basically the same thing, but having lost all sensitivity, they have given themselves over to sensuality so as to indulge in every kind of impurity with a continual lust for more. And now that one specifically I wanted to read you because I want you to think about kind of what they're doing. Where did this begin? It began with homosexuality becoming mainstream many years ago. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't think homosexuals, they were the real ones. I don't think they had bad intentions. I don't believe that the slippery slope the Republicans were talking about at the time, I don't believe that was the intention of the homosexual community. I know a lot of gay people. I always have. I've never known any who wanted to dismantle things the way we see them now. And then we have Gays Against Groomers, even now, who are doing really great work against what the LGBTQ community is doing. You've got plenty of conservative homosexuals who are very much against the LGBTQ cult. So there is a definitive separation there, but it started around that time of mainstream marriage between homosexuals, and then it's progressively gotten worse, So again, Ephesians 4:19, having lost all sensitivity, that comes from repetition, right? Becoming desensitized, having lost all sensitivity, they've given themselves over to sensuality, so as to indulge in every kind of impurity, with a continual lust for more, So it started there, and then it's been a slow burn. And then we see it get worse, and we see it get worse, and we see it get worse. And what has been the next most recent, most horrific part of this slide has been the children, is that now the target is kids. The target is the next generation. And then beyond having kids start to believe, okay, I must be a boy, I must be a girl, I'm in the wrong body. We didn't stop there because we continue to slide. Now it's, I need to mutilate my body. Now it's, I need to take irreversible drugs to change my body. So it doesn't end. And that's why most people, I would say, are so worried about where will it finally hit the bottom? Because there will be a bottom of some kind. And historically, looking at Rome, looking at Corinth, looking at Babylon, historically, the bottom has been societal collapse. When people within a society become so confused that they don't even know who they are, they don't know what they are, they don't know what's between their legs, not to be rude, but you can't have a functioning society at that point. If we have grown men and women crying at work because somebody doesn't call them what they want to be called, you're on your way to societal collapse. Adults are children now, and children are being mutilated. This is dangerous territory that we're in and that we're headed deeper into. Now, the sad part about it is I don't think we're there. I don't think we're really even close. I think we're going to see this get progressively worse. I think it's going to become much more frightening before anything really starts to hit a bottom. But I need you guys to be aware this is just one example of this cult infecting Christianity, infecting the church out of thousands. I've been seeing this where I live in Illinois for 4 or 5 years. And you can drive anywhere in Illinois and see rainbow flags outside of churches. It is not uncommon. It's very common. This will spread to your more red states. It will just take time. And it's very sad. But you guys need to be aware of what's happening. That's the only reason I did this. So, enjoy the information, I guess, but just keep your eyes open, stay sane, stay grounded in what you know is true. And whenever you see this stuff, I hope to God you guys are calling it out. You cannot stay quiet. I've been saying it for a long time. There's no more fence sitting, man. You got to say something.